Welcome to Women of the Wise Path, a place for fostering open discussions about womanhood in our new world paradigm. We are a collective of holistic practitioners, coaches, and leaders devoted to supporting women as we navigate the shifting landscape of our times. Through conversations on health, culture, spirituality, motherhood, partnership, business, and transformation, we intend to spark connections, bridge generations, and share wisdom about what it means to support women of today. Welcome to Women of the Wise Path.
Welcome. Welcome to all who are joining us today. My name is Sharon Ann Rose, and I'm so deeply honored and excited to be stepping into this sacred space and conversation with Maribeth. And this is being held in the Wisdom of the Wise Path series. I'm so blessed to be the host of this conversation. I am a sacred guardian of feminine wisdom and rites of initiatory passage for women as they walk through life, really honoring transition and thresholds as a time of deep reclaiming of our inherent wisdom. So today, Maribeth and I will be connecting in about sacred earth wisdom and her beautiful background and personal story and professional gifts in medicine about how she walks in the world, walking so close to the heartbeat of the earth. So thank you for being here, my dear. And I would love to begin with you introducing yourself.
Well, first off, gratitude for the invitation. I'm extremely honored. My name is Maribeth Swan. I'm from the East Coast and grew up with a deep relationship to the ocean and always felt as though she was the breath of Mother Earth, the tide, the role of the tide, and felt infinitely connected to her and nature in general, because out on Cape Cod, there are not a lot of city influences. You're very remote. There's no public transportation. And my work has come to be as a custom flower essence practitioner and as an intuitive counselor. I also lead ritual for solar and lunar cycles, and I'm a musician and also an herbalist. So I celebrate the earth and the sky and all of their gifts and how they may help us to reconnect to our own true essence and our own divinity.
Beautiful. And will you share more about how, this deep intimacy you hold with life, with creation, with the earth came to be, or what was it that happened in your personal life that really called you closer, so much closer?
It's a beautiful question. To be completely honest, I think it was loss. I mean, to put an overreaching arc on it, I lost a brother very young when I was 27 and he was 25. And my path was informed by his transition and his communication from beyond. And that connection to the realm beyond the earth turned me deeper towards the earth herself. And I started studying herbalism over a decade ago, and I had joined a circle of women who were celebrating solstices and equinoxes and full moons and new moons all the way back in 2007. And so since then, so it's almost 20 years of honoring those divine cycles in ritual and how they connect us more deeper to ourselves. So I started studying herbal medicine. I had taken flower essences a few times as a getting to know you phase. And then for the first time with a directive after a really horrible heartbreak. And I carried this essence around with me like it was my blanket in my purse. And when I was feeling triggered 3 little drops of this flower essence could calm my entire being. And I went along my merry way after healing from that. And 7 years ago now, I was in an industrial accident where a table collapsed underneath me while I was sitting on it. And I went through a lot of iterations of medication, which did not end up serving my body. And I had a dream about borage. And borage is a beautiful, if your viewers are not familiar with it, it's a star-shaped flower. It blooms a very pale violet and turns this gorgeous periwinkle, and the leaves have a star and the petals are a star. And then there are even markings on the interior of the flower in this shape of a star. And the vibrational message of borage is courage. And so I had a dream about borage, and I started using her regularly, and she was just calling me to other flowers. And then I decided, you know what? I want to make my own flower essences from flowers I've grown from seed. And that was the spring of 2019, and snowdrops arrived as volunteers in my yard that spring, and I felt it was an auspicious sign. And that was the first mother essence that I created as the first vision after a New England winter, to see these beautiful white blooms emerging from the ground. And that started my journey of creating mother essences. And then I started gifting those essences to friends and family and practitioners. And then almost 6 years ago, one of my practitioners, a massage practitioner, called me and said that someone wanted my phone number. And I said, for what? For a flower essence consult. And at that point, I had 2 mentors, and I checked in with them, and they had 0 reservations and said, yes, yes, yes. And so I've been honored to do this work since then. And it is one of the greatest gifts of my existence, truly.
Mm. I love hearing this story. You had shared with me some of those aspects before, and I hadn't known it was borage. Like, I love borage.
Do you?
And so talk about that way, because we all know, we all know those flickers of, like, something comes to us in a dream or something shows up in our yard. And that place where you are stepping into collaboration with this energy and also being led and trusting that. Like, share a little more about the nuances. And no, the path is not always straightforward. It can be rife with, like, what am I doing? And just share a little bit more about that.
So part of the journey with the essences was learning kinesiology. And Molly Sheehan is one of my mentors, and that is her main source of energetic intuitive communication. And so I learned via her on how to connect with kinesiology, and through my own reverence and through other people who have created flower essences, of course, Edward Bach, and there's a mystic who I absolutely adore named 𝘍𝘍𝘍 von Bingen, and she's documented as having used flower essences as early as the 12th century. And so the relationship that you develop with the plant being and with earth, but asking permission from the plant and learning when is the appropriate time to make an essence. For the essence to have its purest potency, you want the plant to be blooming at its most full, at its highest frequency. So not right first when it starts blooming, and not when some of those flowers start to drop off the vine, but when it's at its fullest expression. And understanding, learning the dance of the timing with that, because in the beginning I would think, this is a good energy today, the moon is not void, I'm feeling called in this certain part of my body with that color relating to the color, the chakra of the flower, and then receiving a no from the plant. And it was just this real direction of I'm a conduit for this wisdom and this knowledge that comes through, and it's Mother Earth's doing, and she will advise on the timing.
Yeah. And what are you noticing? I'm not sure if why is the right word. Like, why this is so important now. It's always been important. And our ancestors walked with this just as, second nature. Why do you feel it's so significant for us, one, to trust what we receive and pick up on from the earth, whether it's yes, whether it's no, whether it's use me, whether it's ingest me, whether it's, do a ritual with me, and, how you've noticed a shift in your own life, the deeper you've gone upon this path and this deep intimacy.
Well, I feel the divine feminine is coming up and calling to us and asking us to remember her, to reclaim her, to reconnect with her, and to develop ritual within our own being and our own practices and how we connect to her. And many, many ways we're able to do that. But when we create these self-love ritual practices, that connects us deeper to everything that's a part of nature, because we're interdependent we're part of the ecosystem. We're not outside of it. We're just another organism in the ecosystem, like the trees and the birds and the flowers and the animals, as are humans. And so I see it as the whole system and how we function together, and reclaiming, remembering, and coming back into resonance with that wisdom that the indigeneity of all of us have an indigeneity to somewhere, and that all of our ancestors knew. And it's also a recalling of the ancestors, of thinking of how in our DNA is every step that every ancestor has ever taken that came before us. And a friend of mine shared recently, which really sunk so deeply inside of me, that you are truly created in the womb of your grandmother, because women receive our eggs in the womb, when we're in the womb. And so your mother received her eggs, which were you unfertilized, in her mother's womb. And so when you start thinking in the connectivity of to your lineage and ancestry that way, it just becomes this sacred journey. And the more I have personally connected with it, and with the people whom I'm blessed to work with, the more they find they're being invited and called. And I remember my first herbal teacher, she was talking about mullein, which is this gorgeous plant for our lungs. And she said, once you have identified this plant, you'll just start to see it everywhere. And I thought, she doesn't know how we're not start seeing that everywhere. How does she know that? And she was 150% correct.
Mm-hmm.
And once you befriend a plant or a tree or a bird, they become like family. I mean, some people may think I'm, crazy to say that, but they really do. And we develop relationship with these beings, as part of the ecosystem.
So beautifully said. Yeah, and it's interesting as you're speaking, it's there's a place of such innocence. I can feel that awakening. I remember when I was young and others would ask, like, what do you want to do when you get older? And I said, I just want to work with plants, animals, and children. Yeah. And it was that deep, like, this is a different way of relating. This is a different way of conversing. And it has that real vibration, certainly has many vibrations depending on plants and whatnot, but that we come into such soft, subtle, subtlety, innocence, this willingness to really receive and to trust. And to be a vessel, I heard you speak about that, and to be a vessel for this wisdom takes humility and also power. Can you speak on that relationship of, because often people feel um, servitude or vesselship, or that opening is, can be a place of such surrender, which can sometimes often be seen as going against our own,
Mm, mm.
um, wisdom or power. And, how would you weave all of that together?
Well, as I had said earlier, with the loss, if you experience a lot of loss in your life, it does make you humble. And I will say, when I did lose my brother, I felt the next day I could feel him everywhere. I could feel him in the wind, in the leaves of the trees. I could hear him in the call of the seagulls on the shore. I could feel him in the waves of the ocean breathing. And that brings you to a deep humility, the journey of grief. I am not blessed as a mother, as a biological mother in this world, but I believe that other than birthing, grieving just a deeply sacred journey. So that humility, and then I would also that um, birthed humility in a deep way within me, and then also being in this accident and having my life change in a really dramatic way brings you into such a humble place. And I am the oldest child, and I know many women who are the oldest children in their family may tend to be this way, where you have a hard time asking for help,
Mm.
and you can handle everything yourself, and you maybe have had to look out for younger siblings or had more responsibility, and it is a it's something that gets a little ingrained in you. And so the accident was something else that brought me some very deep humility. And all these challenges end up being our gifts. And someone said to me while this was happening to me, two things. One, whatever's happening for you after this is going to be something big. And the other dear friend said to me, if you can try to think about life as it's happening for you and not to you. And I think hopefully that's being repeated a lot more now than it used to be. But it's also part of this surrendering and this humility, and it brings back the innocence and releases an element of trying to control or have this white-knuckled determination, and puts you in a place of receiving.
Yeah, as you're speaking, I just feel the tears welling up, and that is that place of just so willing, just like those tears always are just, yeah, may I hear this, may I feel this, may I allow this to move me, you know. So let's talk a little bit about ritual. And I know towards the end, we might share, a little mini ritual and closure. So, what are some of your favorite rituals to, maybe more of the informal ones, on the fly ones, and also, you spoke a lot about the seasonal ones. So just share kind of a general overview of that, and your kind of turn of the wheel, and how you celebrate it.
Well, I start every day with flower essences. So flower essences are a regular ritual within my world. Um, Fire. I'm a little bit of a pyro, and I like to light candles, and I like to have ceremonial fires, and I create flower essences on a devoted altar, and throughout the season there will be different flowers, or even the matchsticks, anyone's name who I've put on my altar for prayers, and that will go into a little brown paper bag, and then at a ceremonial fire I will burn all of those things and release them. um Pulling a tarot card or an oracle card as a small ritual. Your breath is just the ritual that's available to you at all times. And I think that is one of the most deeply empowering rituals that we can give to every single being. And whatever kind of breath you're called to share in that moment with yourself, with your group, with your client, with your family, with whomever. But it's just a wonderful way to co-regulate our nervous systems. And I think that's a beautiful ritual. Song, a songwriter, and so song is definitely a form of ritual, and there's also percussion. So to be using a drum and to give it a heartbeat while you're bringing to a song, to a chant, even just to the spoken word, is a beautiful ritual. Sun salutations, just honoring the sun, honoring the moon. I'm one of those people who has to go outside, and if the sky is clear, or to see if the sky is clear enough to see the moon or how many stars. I live a little bit outside of Boston, so the sky has some light pollution in it, but I am a sky devotee and may never receive enough of her magic.
Woo! Love it. I feel you, like just like the flowers behind you, sprinkling in so much color, so much variety through all of that, of like, wow. Yeah, life can be filled with so much ritual. And that component of transforming how we see it to really realize this is our daily existence, so much so that breath can be how we acknowledge we are in ritual with life itself. We are just by breathing, we are calling, the forces of creation. And that is so grounding, so powerful. And, so I know, myself included, and so many of the women I work with and know, like, our bodies are going through so much in these times, whether we're entering, later stages of wisdomhood and our wise elder years, whether we're, just in the midst, like, we feel, a female body feels deeply, and often that feeling nature hasn't been respected, and then it becomes, we turn it in on ourselves as illness. So talk about, what you have been receiving over the past few years from Mama Earth's sweet songs of how to work with this, how to be with this. And I don't want to say how to heal this, because this isn't something we need to heal. And yet there are so many, women with debilitating symptoms and having challenges with energy levels, autoimmune conditions, the capacity to think, remember, function throughout a day, sleep. Sleep is just the number one I hear. And I certainly struggled with that for years. So yeah, what have been some, balms of holy sanctuary that you've received, whether it's working with, flowers and essences, working with your clients, working with your own body?
Yes, all of the above. For me, the first journey into that was with this accident. For me, came menopause instantaneously. So that was an arresting time, in which I didn't feel that connected. I wasn't feeling connected to the sacred rhythm of biology at that point. And where I've come to land with it is how we are in this dynamic, sacred rhythm with the earth our entire lives as females. And how deeply I would like to see that be honored for, of course, those of us who are in this time of change and our body shifting, but from the very beginning, and how it's presented to young women. I mean, we say girls, but if you're receiving your moon, are you not a young woman? I mean, that's how I don't know. I guess it can be a little bit of a confusing place, but to honor the voice and the voice of the body and what she's asking. And through compassionate listening to our own being, and through the flowers, and through something else I really love as ritual is our baths, is creating a sacred bath. And I ask my clients and my friends and basically anyone who will listen to me recommend that they take a ritual bath every week. And the waters of the bath, let it remind you of the waters of your womb, of how you're connected to the waters of Mother Earth and your moon cycle. And even if we're not receiving that in a physical way when we reach our maturity, how we're still receiving the ritual of time and the tide, and how we're connected in the divine feminine to the water. And so with a sacred bath, to light a candle, to use some flower essences if you have them, because obviously our skin is our biggest organ, and a beautiful way to absorb the essences. Some Epsom salts, if your doctor allows. Let's address the inflammation and let that magnesium relax us. Some essential oils, if that is something that is pleasing to you and your olfactory senses, and to turn off all of the lights and to have this time that is simply for the honoring of your own divine feminine being.
Feeling that.
Did that answer your question?
Beautiful. Yes, beautiful. Yeah, I went through this really deep process right before I went into perimenopause, and I was living in a home that was, next to 15 acres of forest, and we had a hot tub outside, and I would go at all hours, of the night, because she would call to me, like she would wake me up. And because I had that, I would just go out into the hot tub, and I would, sing to her and be held by her. And it was so interesting when all of that fell away and I was brought into a much more urban environment. Slowly, I got sicker and sicker, and I became so aware of, like, if I had been amongst, my trees and, under the moon in those waters, I would have walked really differently, really differently. And I think by no means, like, I've really reclaimed, irrespective of where I live, we can connect to her, and we can connect to Mama Earth's wisdom and call that in. And even like you were saying, the tides, like when we're in a bath, I could feel that, just pulsating in my body, of we literally can call in and don't even need to call it in. It's there living inside of us. And it really changes, doesn't it? These transitions we go through in our lives, and these initiatory portals, of how we can move through them.
Mm-hmm.
And so talk a little bit more, certainly, potentially, maybe you have spoken about this, but from another angle of whether it was in your accident, whether it was after you lost your brother, like a time when you remember. And you even said you would carry essential oils and just like sniff them and have your flower essences, and they would calm you in a moment. If something comes forward for you, clear memory of just when it was so hard and you felt so alone and so down and so like you could not make it through that next moment, whether it was grief, whether it was pain, body, and just share, like that moment where you did then breathe into an invitation of deeper surrender to the connection with Earth and anything else that was coming through.
I'm going to go back to the accident because I had to go off of all this pain medicine that I was on. And when I did, at that point, Borge started calling me into her, but I noticed myself becoming angrier because I was in more physical pain and becoming less than kind to some of the people around me. And then when they would say, hey, that's not mine. And then we turn it in on ourselves. and I really felt as though the flowers had voices and were asking me to listen, and we're right here, and turning towards them and just receiving the support every single time, and thus creating that ritualistic connection of, oh, when I'm feeling challenged, here is this plant medicine, here's this vibrational medicine, here's the most gentle of elixirs that has no contraindications and that will support my nervous system to release, to uplift, to relax, to embody and connect with the wisdom of the earth.
Yeah, I'm imagining for you as the eldest, the one who did not, have that muscle of, may I have some help, please? That what a profound thing, really, that the gentlest of all substances, the gentlest of all voices, of all medicines, flower essences are just the most subtle and gentle. Like that, it just seems like the perfect messenger for that passage for you. And then just what you're sharing now too, for all of us, of this building of the resiliency and remembrance of, yes, when I do this, when I trust this, and that theme of innocence, when I let myself be innocent in the face of my pain. I even heard you say, they said, we're here, we're here.
And I just thought of another instance when I first started studying herbal medicine, making my first decoction. So a decoction is when you boil the water and then simmer the plant for 40 minutes to an hour, and it's just taking all that goodness out of the plant. And learning about it and then getting a chest cold, where in the past I might have made an appointment with my doctor after a certain amount of time when I wasn't starting to feel better. And I was making myself teas and I wasn't seeing the shift in my health that I wanted. And then I thought, oh, I've been taught how to make this decoction, and going to make a decoction out of some roots and some plants and drinking that. And 2 days later, having this sickness start to leave my body. And that blew my mind. That I'd say that's when the secret garden truly opened up for me, of just wow. And I had a grandmother from Italy who was very against medicine. I have inherited all of her natural healing books. She refused to eat anything that was from a jar or a package. She didn't like to go to restaurants. She would say, I don't know where they got their olive oil. And she lived until she was 97. And she was a party girl, I will say. And it wasn't like she took the best care of her body in the world. She married a musician and they had a very late night kind of life. But in everything that she ingested with food, it was from the garden, it was fresh, it was, cooked fresh. She didn't like to put anything in the freezer. She'd say, you kill it. You kill it. Don't put it in the freezer. And so she also was dripping these little drops of wisdom upon me. And my journey with the plants didn't start until just as she was passing. So
Wow.
I guess, we're gifted these little steps in so many different ways. And then as we let them permeate, they become part of us.
I could feel your grandmother's presence here as you were like bringing her in voice and spirit. And, what a sense of confidence she held in her body, not just her body's ability, but her own capacity to say no, like, no, not doing those things, not going to the doctor, not going to eat that stuff. It was almost like this really, gorgeous energy of, no, I don't need that. I got it. And And, as we're starting to, because we're going to move into ritual. So, what is the word I want to say? What would you share about how to trust that in yourself? Like trust exactly that energy that your grandmother embodied so beautifully and dripped, the sweet sacred medicine into your psyche and being of how to be like, no, I don't need that. I've got this. And I know what will be like just the subtle, non-invasive, wonderful support for what I most need,
That's a really great question. And I would say that it's probably different. It could be different for everyone. The first thing that came to mind in the way of trust and in connecting to yourself is to go outside, someplace quiet, and listen for the bird song. Because when you hear those birds singing, your nervous system calms down. And that is just an immediate trust that your body knows before your mind does, of trust, because the birds aren't singing unless it's safe, right? They wouldn't be singing unless they felt completely free. And so if we can connect in with that, that was just the first thing that popped into my mind. But it could be from, maybe you say to yourself, I'm going to try out not eating white sugar for a week and just test out how my body feels. I'm going to try going on a walk without any headphones or that's something I really ask for everyone to do when they walk. Tune into the earth. And if you're in a city, then tune in. When you're tuning into the earth, that's also tuning into other human beings. And so something I love to do is strike up conversation in line at the post office or the grocery store and comment on something someone's wearing, or if we're in the grocery store, it's great if they have an item in their basket to say, oh, what's your favorite recipe to make with that? And just as you test out your environment and see the connections that are just waiting, because if you share that little spark of light, it's received, whether it's out in nature, if it's, with humanity, or if it's in communion for yourself with your own body and how you treat it. There are so many different avenues to get there. And I think we're all starting to traverse those roads in our own way, in the shoes that feel comfortable, whether we like, dirt roads or we like paved ones, or they're sanded, or we're swimming these passageways, whatever they may be, that connection is available for us in any way, which I guess it's a deeper listening. And we haven't spoken about meditation at all. And I know so many believe that you need to be sitting in a position with mudras and your breath. Well, your breath, yes, but you could do a walking meditation, you could do a singing meditation, but just where we become so aware of our own nervous system, that's where it starts.
Mm. 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 Yeah. Settling into that with sacred breath. And really the holy permission you are offering to all of us in this sacred invitation of whatever shoes are most comfortable for you. Trust that.
Mm-hmm.
And this way that we get to strip down, so much of our spiritual traditions, etc., have, really great foundations, but often quite dogmatic for the modern world and just the everyday things that we walk through and face. And so to strip that away and for you to hear you say, it doesn't matter where you are. You can be in nature, you can be in the grocery store, you could be, connecting in with your own body, your own form. Like it is here that we get to reclaim, this kind of empowered and also just human way to show up, listening to life without the filtration. And certainly we can say digital technology is a huge one. And it also doesn't have to be, because when we own this, like your grandmother did, it doesn't matter what comes our way. We will face it, we'll face it with that direct willingness to do that listening that listens beyond just what the surface sound might be.
And I want to go back to one thing when you asked me about ritual that I wanted to include in the celebrations of the solar and lunar cycles. When you do this in circle, so of course you could do this by yourself, but when you do this in circle and you come to set a sacred space for a circle and for open sharing and for trust, and you put this space and this beauty and this container around a group of people where everything that is said or expressed is sacred and not to be shared beyond this place in time, and how that elicits a grounding in your nervous system. I've had many people say that to me, like, wow, after their first moon circle or a solstice or an equinox, how much that shifted them on their interior with their own selves, and then how that filtered out, like dropping a rock in a pond, and how the ripples came out. Because as women, as the center of life, when something affects us, it ripples out through our family, through our community, through our coworkers. And so that the sacred listening and sacred space, the container of sacred space. I just wanted to bring that.
Yeah, thank you. And let us enter that sacred space together and begin to have a little closing ritual, if you would be willing to begin that and share that with us.
I like to use Tibetan symbols. I tested those earlier and thought they sounded a little loud. So I'm going to use my little Tibetan bowl here. And just thank everyone who's here today with us, and to thank you for this sharing and invitation. And let's breathe into the sacred center of our heart. Okay. And then I want to also is going to share read a part of a song that I wrote a little while ago about women coming together in the form of a Sexton Gold. And so a sexton is a holy group of people. And some of your viewers might have read The Mists of Avalon, but that was an inspiring book many, many years ago when I first started joining moon circles, about the power of women communing with wisdom and trust and heart to empower each other. So this is called Sexton Gold. Like a sage knowing beyond reason, up in the shire of a sacred grove, a mist procures the coming season. High on a hill is a Sexton Gold. We have skipped over our own knowing. Oh, the power to be reclaimed, peering through a changing lens, climbing out of a deep ravine. Declarations of interdependence, gathering feathers, flowers, and stone, rewriting this code of silence. Who holds to the highest ground? The blackthorn is soon to bloom. Wave off the maiden for the crone. You may close your eyes in the depths, but you may not forgo the cocoon.
You dear. What an honor.
And I'd love to share where people can find me.
Yes, please. I was just going to ask you.
Oh, beautiful. So my name's Maribeth Swan. My website is swanessence.com. There I offer a new moon newsletter where I will give reflections on what's going on in the sky and a few recipes that are inspiring me, or quotations, and some flowers that I've seen in that moon cycle and who have some gifts and messages to share. I'm honored to have just taught at Herbstock, which is a big herbal festival here in the Boston area. And I am always interested in hearing from men and women. And I also work with children and with animals to create essences to support their wellness journeys.
Thank you. And I have to say, your reflections on the flowers and on the beautiful, plant species are just so poignant and deep and powerful. So I highly recommend your newsletter and following that, rhythm of what you put forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, gorgeous. Well, thank you so much for connecting here today. Really, really a privilege and an honor, and my heart is very full.
Likewise. Thank you, Sharon Rose.
Thank you for joining us today for Women of the Wise Path. Continue the journey with more conversation, events, and resources at the address below. We'd love to hear from you and what you would like to talk about. Together, we're shaping a future rooted in wisdom, collaboration, and the infinite power of the feminine spirit. Until next time, may we walk all together the wise path, guided from within.